Hi, everybody. It's Jeff Gayduk from Leisure Group Travel, and I'm here today with Jeff Roy from Collette Vacations. Jeff, how are you doing today?
Great. Thanks, Jeff.
Good. So, Jeff, I've got a number of questions for you today, many of which revolve around your back to touring plans. As we talked about, we've been monitoring different tour operators as they get back on the road, and I've got to say that Colette's really leading the pack.
Yeah, we started back up in July. Our first departure was July 3rd to South Dakota. We've run about 40 departures this year, averaging about 15 to 20 passengers per tour. Um, the response has been strong. People have had very good vacation experiences this year. We've had a number of protocols we had to implement, but people have been compliant. They're very resilient, and people really want to get out there and travel. So we've, from that respect, had a nice restart in the beginnings of a recovery.
Nice, nice. So, can you walk me through that decision-making process of when you felt you can operate, and I guess most importantly with that, what you felt you could operate?
So we started to really think strongly about restarting operations probably in mid-May. We had we had started to hold meetings with some healthcare professionals. We had a line to the former director of the Rhode Island Department of Health here in Rhode Island. And we went through a number of protocols and took suggestions from them for how we could do that safely. So once we kind of went through that process, we felt, this was something that we could do safely. The virus had begun to wane in many parts of the country. And, being summer, certainly a lot of the domestic products that we operate, and we do have a large, like a heavy domestic product line. A lot of those tours are, a lot of outdoor experience and that sort of thing. So people could really do it in a way that, mitigated risk. One thing we wanted to point out, I know, people take different points of view on it. We felt equally responsible to the guests that wanted to travel this summer as we did to those that didn't feel comfortable traveling. So it was really about providing options to people. But there were a bunch of destinations that we felt we could do safely. Our spotlight on South Dakota products, anything in the national parks, Mackinac Island, those sorts of tours. And as we called customers and said, "Hey, we're gonna run this tour," we kept quite a few of the people that said, "Yeah, we wanted to go," and then a lot of people said, "I'm not really comfortable going," and we provided them options. Hey, you can move to next year. You can maybe take a voucher for future travel, that sort of thing. So
Good.
it went pretty well. Yeah.
Nice, nice. So, I know one of the challenges that we're all facing is how do we navigate around tighter restrictions? How have you dealt with museums not being open or restaurants that couldn't fit a group coming in? What sort of creative itinerary development have you had to do?
Yeah, for the most part, we didn't operate a tour that we couldn't provide um, the experience we advertised to the customer. So, the good news is most of the restrictions weren't really around closures so much as group sizes. We made a commitment that we weren't going to run a tour with more than 50% capacity on the coach. So once we did that, we were operating with groups of, 15 to 20. So generally speaking, we didn't have any major issues at that point. It was really just down to compliance, like wearing masks and things like that. If we ever got into the scenario where we couldn't go in with more than 10 people, we'd split the group into two. So 10 and 10 or 7 and 7 or something to that effect. So we actually really didn't have a lot of issues with that. The bigger problems were the interstate border travel restrictions. So for example, our Mackinac Island tour, everything was fine in Michigan, and everything was fine in Illinois with the exception of the city of Chicago, which just happens to be the first 2 nights of the tour. And they put a bunch of travel restrictions in place over the summer for people coming from certain states. But surprisingly, if we had a customer coming from, say, Tennessee, and they weren't allowed into Chicago, but they were allowed into Michigan, we would call the customer and say, "Hey, sorry, you want to move to a future departure or whatever." We actually had people that said, "Well, no, I really want to go on the tour. You know what? Why don't you just book me 2 nights in Traverse City and I'll meet the group there."
Nice.
And they come. And so we found a lot of that. People really wanted to go. So we just had to be flexible. That's all.
So it sounds like people were very accommodating on the front end. What sort of reaction are you getting sort of post-tour? I'm sure you're doing surveys and gauging their reaction to the experience. What sort of feedback are you getting on the touring experience? Obviously, some of this is out of your control, but
Yeah.
to give me a little insight there.
Yeah, I mean, I think initially that first departure that went, those were some intrepid travelers, if you will. They were really willing to get out and do it. I think once we started going, people got more comfortable with it. Our post travel customer feedback has been overall 92% excellence. That's how they've rated the product. 3/4 of our guests told us that they felt precautionary measures had no impact on their enjoyment of the tour. We were really worried about asking people to wear a mask on a coach. Back in May, it was kind of, ooh, are people really going to be willing to do that? Now it's like, of course they're going to do it. You gotta wear it everywhere. But 2/3 of our guests told us their next guided tour will be in 2021. And almost like 9 out of 10 of the returning travelers, they indicated they'd be willing to continue traveling under these social distancing restrictions, wellness protocols, and so forth. So we actually feel like it's a really big success. People got out there, they had a good time. We didn't have any issues. We did it in a way that we felt mitigated risk, and people enjoyed themselves and they're willing to do it again. In fact, we had customers that would come back from a trip in September and book another trip for October.
Nice,
That
nice.
happened a couple of times. So it's good.
That's got to show you a bit about the pent-up demand that's out there, which we're all really relying on going forward. Your point about masks, very well taken as well. A friend of mine in China sent me video back in March of the city starting to open back up and everybody was wearing masks. And I remember the thought in my head and my comment back to him was like, that's very foreign. Nobody's going to do that here. And, fast forward to November and it's kind of the standard operating procedure in most parts of the country. So
Yeah,
quickly how fast our opinion changes.
it's true.
So,
Absolutely.
so Jeff, I know one of the hats that you wear at Collette is that you're in charge of the air department, and I think specifically when it comes to international travel making a comeback,
Hmm.
that's a concern from a lot of people insofar as will there be enough lift. So can you give me a little insight as far as what you're experiencing now as you're contracting for 21, and maybe forecasting the future as far as is there going to be enough available airline seats at decent prices in order to fill upcoming demand?
Yeah, I believe that there will be enough lift and they will be at decent prices. I mean, things to keep in mind. There was an awful lot of airline consolidation that happened in the early 2000s, and into the middle of the 2000s. Certainly, after 9/11 and then after the financial crisis in 2009. But that also opened up a lot of opportunity with these alliances. You've got SkyTeam, One World, and Star Alliance. While you may not be able to get the direct flight you used to be able to get, maybe into Venice or a place like that, there's going to be a secondary way for you to get there by connecting through, Frankfurt or something to that effect. So I would say that there will be plenty of lift. There'll probably be a lot less point-to-point direct service next year, but I think you'll be able to get wherever you want to go with maybe a connection. I think
Okay.
people have to be comfortable with that.
Do you think that will ultimately affect your tour routing of maybe where you want to start a tour in Frankfurt, whereas in the past maybe you would have gone into Venice initially, just as an example, or will you just accept that there's going to be some connections and that's part of the touring experience for 2021?
Yeah, I would say the latter. I think just it'll be the connections. And I think over time you're going to see the sorry about that. You're going to see those point to point flights come back on. So typically when we make changes to product, it's for a long stretch of time, at least 12 months. I don't think we'll make a lot of changes. You'll be able to get to places, and taking a connecting flight, there's always a trade-off. You can connect to a smaller airport, or you can take a long bus ride to a big airport. you know, I think you take the connecting flight and preserve the tour experience itself.
Yeah, yeah, good point. So aside from air, let's kind of turn the page on 2020, not quick enough for most of us. Going into 2021, what are some of the challenges that you guys are running into in building tour product, or maybe what are the opportunities? Because obviously, some of the sectors of the industry have been hit really hard and may not come back as quick.
Yeah, I mean, so on the one hand, We're actually set up really, really well for 2021. The, the product planning, the contracting, the pricing, everything that happens so far in advance for us. We were releasing May 21 through April 22 product in first quarter of this year. So before the crisis even hit, we were well on our way to having everything ready to go from May forward of next year. So we've got all the space, we have all our itineraries done, the pricing's all in the market, so that's great. I think we'll have to continue to do audits because to your point, um, will that restaurant be open anymore by the time our tour comes to that destination and so forth. So there will be a lot of logistical work that has to happen as we roll forward into those 2021 departures to make sure that what we promised will in fact be there. We're very confident that we'll be able to preserve the full experience. There may be some substitutions here and there on the touring itself, but we should be fine. Everything, all of our space is firmed up at this point.
Okay. One of the thoughts that I had, and in fact, I read a report yesterday. Bill Gates was doing a session, and he's talking about the future of business and meeting travel. And his prediction is that that sector is going to be down 50%. As people have found a new way to operate, and we may never go back to those levels. So, looking at this not from the glass half empty, but the glass half full, does that create an opportunity for a company like Collette to maybe upgrade tour product, upgrade hotel stays, and places that maybe weren't receptive and weren't calling you back for great rates when you were trying to get into places, or what does happen there?
Yeah, I think in the near term, for sure. I think hotel partners and I think airlines, they're going to be looking to the leisure channel to fill a void that's going to exist at least for a little while on the business travel side. So, I think that bodes well for our customers. We already have a fair number of our customers that like to fly in business class, for example, or even premium economy. The airlines are going to need help filling those seats. So I would imagine there'll be some attractive deals for those sorts of things. Certainly on the room upgrade side, on the hotels, there'd be opportunities there. But I don't expect that to be necessarily a long-term solution. I think the CEO of United Airlines made the analogy a few months back and said, hey, we're all doing Zoom meetings in or Microsoft Teams, whatever it is you're using right now. But the first time that you lose an account to a company that actually went out in destination and took a vendor out to lunch or dinner, and you didn't, before you know it, everybody's going to start traveling again for corporate. So, I think even for ourselves, we look at it, we're missing the USTOA conference this year, all the in-person meetings with our vendors. We cannot wait until next year to start meeting people in person again. So I don't think this is a long-term thing. I think it's short-term. There's going to be budget concerns for companies for a little while. But I'm sure by 2023, 2024, things are going to start, they're going to be recovering quite a bit.
Okay. Good to know, and I appreciate that perspective as well. So, looking at next year, how optimistic are you? There's news on vaccine fronts and better therapeutics. Where are you thinking that we'll have a semblance of a decent tour market? Is there a certain quarter next year that you're starting to see numbers, or does this push to 22? Give me a little insight on the business end.
Yeah, I think first quarter is going to be very quiet. Second quarter, towards the tail end of second quarter, we're still getting new bookings. So when you're out into like May, June, third and fourth quarter of next year, though, we do expect is going to be really busy. We're seeing a lot of booking activity for the second half of next year. Certainly the vaccine news, the election, there's a lot of positive momentum. We expect the new administration will probably be pretty active in trying to reopen international travel. There may be testing requirements. You've seen Common Pass recently tested between Newark and London Airport. The idea that somebody's going to have a digital health record, either their test records or a vaccine record in order to travel next year, we think that's pretty likely. We're likely to see that sometime, hopefully in second quarter. But certainly getting into third and fourth quarter, we'll expect a pretty robust domestic travel business next year once we hit the summer, May, June forward. But we also expect Europe to come back online and other parts of the world as well. So
Nice. Okay.
We're up to it.
So along those lines, then, we're in the pre-formed group market. We did a survey in the last few weeks of our readers, and there's an astounding number that just have not rebooked trips
Mhm.
that have been canceled. So, what's your best advice to them going forward as far as how they go about their plans? I think some of them felt they were burned and they've got to do refunds and such. So maybe just a little bit of hesitancy in the market right now. But what would you recommend to them as far as getting back in their groups motivated for 2021?
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, I can speak from Colette's viewpoint for sure. I mean, we were very, very accommodating, I think, for our groups and our consumers. If we had to cancel a tour, we offered people the opportunity to move to a future departure, a voucher worth 105% of the tour value, or a full cash refund. And to date, we've refunded over $115 million in cash back to customers. So we really didn't have anybody on our end that was burned. But we have been calling back customers that canceled things like the Oberammergau Passion Play that was supposed to happen this summer. Uh, we've seen very strong booking activity for that for 2022. We're more than half sold already. Some of that was moved, but the new booking activity has really picked up. The farther out you go, the better it is. So, no, I would say, look, I think you alluded to it earlier. Travel demand is going to be significant at some point. The switch is going to flip. People are going to realize they're going to be able to be vaccinated this year, or they're going to be able to travel with a test or whatever they're comfortable with. All that is going to open up. We're not going to be shut down forever here. And if you want to travel, you really should start to think about booking it pretty soon, because you may not be able to get the space. You can't concentrate a full year's worth of travel into, say, a 3 or 4 month period. When
Sure.
there's high demand, you won't be able to go. So I would say if people are thinking that they're going to want to go next year sometime, they should get it on the books.
Very good advice. Okay, Jeff. Well, I really appreciate your time today. Super good insight. Congratulations on what you've done. It's hard to say congratulations to anybody this year, but seriously, I mean, just what you've been able to move and how you've been able to do this year is really a testament to the operations at Collette and the fortitude you guys have. I'm glad that you guys have really paved the way for a lot of other operators out there who maybe have been a little hesitant, because we've got to get the industry back up and running.
We've been doing this for 102 years. We've been through these sorts of things before, and we'll come out of this no problem. So, but thank you.